and we'll get started. All right, I'm super excited today. I am here with Capucine Jenkins. Capucine is the Senior Manager of Digital Art and Curator of NFTs at Saatchi Art, the world's leading online gallery. She has a BA in Sociocultural Anthropology, as well as a BA in Art History from Auburn University. Prior to joining Saatchi Art, Capucine has worked in numerous museums, most notably at the High Museum of Art in Atlanta. She later accepted research and sales strategy roles in prominent galleries such as David Zwirner and Lévy Gorvy in New York. I hope I pronounced it right. And spanning a decade, Capucine's curatorial career has allowed her to organize historical and contemporary art exhibitions for major institutions, established galleries, and emerging NFT marketplaces. She's passionate about nurturing young artists, innovating digital art spaces, and I'm really super excited to have you here today, Capucine. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
Yes, absolutely, likewise. And so we kind of, talked the last time a little bit about what we would want to talk about today, and there are a few elements came up. But one of them was in particular the kind of like an ABC to NFTs. If you, for example, are talking to me, this is something that I definitely also need. So I was happy to hear that, and we'll drift off into other areas too, and you share about your project that you've got going right now. But how about you share a little bit from yourself, Capucine, like how you've gotten to do this amazing work that you're doing?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'll just kind of start with my NFT and crypto journey and how I sort of made it at Saatchi. So probably about a little over a year ago, I was at David Zwirner. Really loved it. I would even say I have former colleagues that I'm still really close with. So the community there was wonderful. The work that I did there was really great, some combination of research and sales. But I could feel a shift. And I noticed that, I had already sort of invested in a little bit of cryptocurrency, was somewhat privy to what decentralized finance is and sort of this movement online, sort of centered around, kind of decentralizing the internet and disrupting like financial institutions, like that kind of thing, that kind of rhetoric, which appealed to me at the time. And I would say sort of around the time of the boom last summer, the NFT boom, which for anyone who isn't familiar, it's this period last summer where the value and the cost of NFTs, like the market was pretty nuts. At the time, I believe ETH was maybe Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency. It was probably maybe 4K at the time. There were many collectors or just curious buyers who wanted to get into NFTs or curious about what it is or like what the blockchain technology was. And it was maybe just some, I guess, kismet, like luck. And also maybe I was just feeling something in the air that this was sort of like a good place to shift my energy and my interest. Also learning a lot about the benefits of blockchain technology and NFTs for artists was a huge appeal to me. One was learning that, and I had worked at Lévy Gorvy in secondary market sales, and I'd seen time and time again blue chip artists selling, for a few million. You also see this at auction houses, selling for a few million, and the state never seeing a penny of it. because, like subsequent resales, there is no baked in royalty meant for the artist. So that was one thing, NFTs being able to offer that to artists. That was something that really appealed to me. Too, as a curator, I wasn't doing curatorial work at Zwirner at the time, but I knew that this was the opportunity to actually be able to make a contribution as a curator in this way. So I had started at First Dibs, and I'm not sure if you're familiar, but it's this really great e-commerce, more secondary dealer company. And they were just launching their NFT marketplace. They hired me on to kind of build out their curatorial component, and was there, help them, build out that marketplace, and really learned a lot about NFTs and what a smart contract is, and what metadata is, and what all an artist needs in order to secure their royalties. Just little things like that I really wouldn't have had the kind of experience with in a museum or a traditional art institution. So I eventually made my way over to Saatchi Art, and they hired me on as, right now, as we're making and building out a pretty robust program, NFT program, and definitely digital art presence site-wide. And we are just really excited to keep diving into this and the benefits of it for our artists. So yeah, it was sort of the transition from sort of a traditional art world to this NFT digital art curatorial space is exciting, and truly I'm learning something new every day.
Amazing. No, it's really, yeah, amazing to hear everything, like from like what you've done in the other place. What's it called? It was First It's. I didn't quite catch the name. First It's, the e-commerce place,
First
and then
First
Steps, and then going to Saatchi Art and everything that you set up. Being there, I've had a look as well at the project that you're doing. I know you're sharing a little bit more about that, about the vision of future. And yeah, I'm curious about as well, before we dive deeper into that, how did you get into the art space? Like, was this something that you always wanted to do? That you knew that you wanted to go into art area from childhood on? Or how did it work?
Oh, for sure. In some capacity, pretty early on, I I had been classically trained as a musician. I played violin since I was 8 or 9, and that was more of my lane. I tried art and was terrible at it. And so I had decided pretty early on that I love art. I love being an enjoyer of art. But maybe I shouldn't be an artist. So then, I've sort of appreciated it from afar, not really thinking that it was much of a skill of mine, up until I'd gone into college, probably late high school. College, I'd realized that there was this, you could participate in artistry, and you can participate in art criticism, and don't have to be an artist. That was just something that never occurred to me before. So then, I had initially had an art history minor, and I just learned so much more about the canon, the art history canon, and also learning sort of what a curator is, and just getting all of this new information that might not have necessarily been public knowledge, or at least a part of like public perception of what art is, and how people sort of contribute to the art world. So in a sense, it was always there. There was a lot of looking for me, going to the museum, um, supporting friends, gallery shows, like just really looking as much as I possibly can,
Yeah.
and even just in my own way, developing my own taste. And then maybe in a more cerebral way, in college, I was able to actually appreciate it in my way and see how I was able
Mm.
to, um, I guess, contribute to the artistry. So, in a sense, it was
Mm.
always sort of there. But yeah, and you also remember, like certain projects that like have changed your perception of what you're able to do and what's possible for you
Yeah.
to do. Um,
Mm.
uh, like you had mentioned earlier, my first degree was in anthropology.
Mm.
And I was sure, just like every freshman in college, is that they're going to do that. And the first thing that they decided on for their major is the thing that they're going to do for the rest of their lives. I was
Yeah.
sure I was going to be an anthropologist, take the very traditional academic track of,
Mm.
undergrad, master's, PhD, and that was just going to be my life. And then, maybe halfway through my program, as much as I loved it, and I still do, it's my first degree was really invaluable to um, really a lot of my studies, but I also just felt really called to museum work in
Mm.
particular, and art in particular, just really understanding how artists are storytellers.
Mm.
And that was a
Mm.
common thread for me between, anthropology and art history at the time. And just kind of, I realized as a curator, you're able to actually tell those stories. And that artists need someone to tell their story.
Mm.
And that was the big draw for me.
Amazing. I was actually curious before to ask you that question, like what in particular about art was it that drew you towards it? And now you just shared the part of telling the story as an artist, or the artist telling a story. So that's yeah, that's I love as well how you're connecting, all of your like everything that you enjoy, like the anthropology, the social aspect to it and the history and yeah and the art and your passion, like you've gone, it's drawn you back like almost yeah, like it was like and almost like something that you couldn't um not have in your life, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. I sort of, yeah, in a sense, I wanted to make it a part of my life however I could.
Mm,
And maybe, I just had the language later on to realize that, oh, this is the thing that drew me
yeah.
um, to art and to artists. So yeah, to your point, there definitely was I will make this fit and I will try to understand what exactly that's so enticing and so interesting.
Yeah.
Um, about the craft.
Amazing. And now in terms of digital art and the development with the NFTs, like what are you noticing the changes and shifts that are happening uh, for artists with the yeah the coming of the NFTs in that sense?
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting question. Um, I think that in many ways, NFTs have legitimized digital art. There are digital artists who do not, and probably won't work with NFTs. And, maybe it's worth saying that there is a distinction between digital art and NFT art.
Mm,
Digital art, as I've said before, is really any art that can be described as being manipulated, edited um, by computer software or applications.
mm,
And NFT is really a technological tool. And there are many ways of using NFTs that are non-art related, and creating fine art. It's just one of the ways you can do that. So I think when NFTs as a tool were introduced, and artists, creators, they figured out that, oh wait, I can actually use this technology to benefit and commercialize my art. Yeah, let's do it. And so, like the result is that, because NFTs have this ability to basically track every transaction on a ledger, that it really is able to identify true ownership. So the initial criticism for digital, or one of the initial criticisms of digital art, has been, well, I can take a screenshot of a JPEG or screen record a video, and I own it. So what's the point in buying this image file or video file? And NFTs were able to make it very clear who the owner of an image or video, of the digital artwork, make it very clear who that person or entity was. So NFTs have really kind of changed how we think of patronage, collecting, and ownership. So what is the value of owning something, and what does it mean to actually own an artwork? Is the physical, having the physical thing, is that the only kind of ownership that can be had? It really brought in some really interesting questions that I think are incredibly valuable to the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And I would actually, love to hear what you might want to say to that question, like the value of NFT, like when you buy it and you own it. Tell me a little bit more about that, because I'm still getting my head around it.
Oh, maybe I should start with what an NFT is.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
So an NFT is a non-fungible token, which is essentially a unique digital asset that's housed on the blockchain. Those words probably don't mean very much to you, but the best way I can describe it is with an analogy, something that's familiar to us. So similar to an accountant's log, which in its own way is a ledger. The blockchain network basically records, like an accountant's log, every transaction that's made on that ledger. And unlike, a personal accountant log, this information is transparent. It's public domain, so anyone can see what activity is happening on the ledger. And so what an NFT is essentially a transaction that's been imprinted onto the ledger. I know it sounds like a little esoteric, but that's the most familiar analogy that I'm able to give. An NFT, essentially what non-fungible means is that it is a unique token. It has like a token ID, and you're able to identify it as uniquely itself. So let's say, for example, I have an artist who has created digital artwork that's in the form of an image file, a JPEG, maybe a PNG. And they would like to, what you call mint, which is essentially a way of just saying they would like to create an NFT. When they would like to mint their NFT onto the blockchain, basically minting is compiling a bunch of data and putting it on the network so that everyone can see. And because everyone can see it, when a collector buys that NFT, it is clear who the owner is. Now that can be sort of, there are questions about, privacy and transparency and things like that. But when it comes to buying an NFT, it's actually much more simple than it seems. Really, all you would need to do, let's say are you familiar with any of the major marketplaces?
Yeah, kind
It's okay
of.
to not be. It's okay to not be.
I've heard them flying around here and there, but can't remember the names exactly. Is it
Yeah,
OpenSea and so on?
yeah,
Is that
yeah.
yes, yes. So
Um,
I may know that one.
Yeah, OpenSea, there's super rare art blogs. There's several NFT marketplaces. We essentially have our own too. They tend to be sort of supported on other platforms, but Saatchi, we also have a marketplace.
Wow.
And so there you're able to at least see what you'd like to buy. And really, it's as simple as downloading an app, connecting that identifier or app to one of the marketplaces, and then bidding or simply buying now. And you have an NFT, and the NFT goes into your app. That is
Okay.
best, maybe linear way, like
no, thank you for that. I do understand it much better now, actually. I mean, I've heard it now a few times, and this time it really sunk in, like especially the part of it being somehow like a proof of ownership in some way, like that if you with the transparency, so it's now it makes more sense for me to understand how the buying process is and how it's more secure, how you can link it back to the owner who's created it. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, it can, I mean, it's notorious in Web3 that the space, the NFT and crypto native space isn't very user friendly. And it's part of some of it's one of the blockers and some of the friction that sort of the layman or someone who is curious or isn't a technologist or a developer, when they sort of at least try to access it or penetrate the space in some way, they have a really difficult time because a lot of the language is technical or specific to sort of the insiders, that people who are part of the ecosystem already. So when we use things like even blockchain network or wallet, a wallet address, like those aren't really words that are generally understood. It's, I always like to think of it as it's similar to when we first started using credit cards. And it seemed odd. It didn't quite feel like we were using money. There was some distrust around using a credit card. At the time, at least early on, many people were applying for credit cards, receiving them and maxing out because it didn't quite feel like real money, especially in the 80s. There's so many people who still have credit card debt from the 80s. But I like to think of it as kind of a similar phenomenon. Like you don't feel as if, the currency that you have is necessarily real. Even though it's just like any other transaction, any kind of monetary transaction that we already have in our traditional systems.
Yeah. So almost an NFT itself becomes like a monetary, so it could be compared to like money in some way. Is that like to value?
Huh? Yeah, it's an asset. Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
For sure. And which is why the question of ownership is just like any artwork, the question of ownership is really important. And really just like any artwork, I often think of sort of going back to the question of how do you know who owns something and what true ownership looks like. I mean, we've seen forgeries of some of the most valuable, most expensive paintings in history be forged, go through several conservators, several auction houses, meaning, and it turns out that they were mistaken as the real thing and fooled many people, scholars, experts. And it makes you question, what is a true artwork? If someone could buy a forged artwork and enjoy it all the same, does it actually invalidate the true thing? So I always like to pull in that, I guess, parallel, because they're very similar.
That's such an interesting point or question, actually. Yeah, very, very interesting, actually, to look at how, if somebody can enjoy the art of somebody who's forged it, is that the right word? And
Yeah.
without knowing it, still enjoy the art, like, does it invalidate the original, if I'm understanding the question right? I find that really interesting.
It might not be ideal for the many people who have bought forged artworks, probably paid millions of dollars for them. But yeah, that's the reality.
Yeah. And you mentioned something about, and obviously there seems to be like a big thing with the NFTs as well, capitalizing your own profits for artists, how it's really empowering the artists as well within that.
Yeah, for sure. So, and this is actually really similar to the music industry, and I'm so glad within the last 10 years that musicians and artists have been more transparent about this. But sort of like I mentioned earlier, many artists have been sort of left out of the increasing value, increasing appreciation of their artwork, sort of the bigger they become, and the bigger their market becomes. And so essentially one of the ways that you can, well, the only way that you can mint an NFT is by creating a smart contract. And basically an NFT, even an image file, all those things are just data compiled together. And so a smart contract just holds all of that data. And one thing that you're sort of able to stipulate anything in your smart contract. And one of those things is actually including like a resale commission or royalties. The artist receives 5% of any subsequent sale outside of the primary sale. So now we're seeing artists, because of NFTs, and especially digital artists, seeing that they're now able to reap the benefits of the increased value of their artwork. And where, that hasn't been the case before. So I think it really is a way for artists to now be able to commercialize their work, which is, I mean, obviously it's very important for, our perception of artists as sort of the starving artist, or maybe, if you're a little more privy to what's going on in the art world, it's getting mega gallery representation. And I think that NFTs have the capacity for artists to be able to sell their work and continue to sustain a life for themselves off of their artwork, without necessarily needing, mega gallery representation. They can live a comfortable life, rather than being a struggling artist, because some dealer bought their work for $2K and then flipped it and sold it to someone else for $50K. So yeah, I think it's a really great opportunity for artists to kind of capitalize their profit.
Fantastic. And actually that brings me to the question, which, by the way, thank you so much for answering all my questions, because they are very ABC questions, I guess, from my side. But I'm getting a lot of this from you. So thank you. And I'm sure the listeners will too. What is how much is an NFT to buy? What are the price ranges for NFT art?
That's a great question. So it sort of depends. So because cryptocurrency isn't necessarily, because it isn't like fiat, which is a fixed currency, so it sort of fluctuates with the market. Um, you could buy 1 ETH, and you put in 1K for 1 ETH. But ETH at the time, I'm getting into numbers. But ETH at the time was $800. So the value kind of fluctuates with whatever the market is.
Right.
However, so it is in a sense difficult to say sort of like a fixed range. However, it really depends on the collector base, where you're selling your work, also your own market. If you're experienced with NFTs, if you kind of have already established yourself or are eager to establish yourself in the space, there are a number of factors that can actually decide on how an artist would even begin to I guess have a floor. We call it a floor, or kind of set what their market is at each stage in their career, or at least their NFT career.
Yes. Would you mind sharing what some of those factors might be to determine that floor for an artist, let's say somebody who might consider it?
Yeah, so I would say that one thing to do, well, first is to actually just kind of get started. Become onboarded and educated, either through a marketplace, or there's so much information out there now that allows artists to be able to at least get kind of some preliminary information, or even mint their own NFTs. So at least getting started, having some artwork to begin with, and getting your hands a little dirty. Also getting a little more familiar with the space, knowing where people in the Web3 ecosystem are congregating. So that could be Discord, that could be Twitter. Those are really two main places that this crypto native, and often venture capitalists and collectors, where and creators and artists kind of come together and are in community with each other, and build a network. I would also say that, to piggyback off of that, building a relationship with potential collectors. And what's so great about the Web3 space is that many roles are blurred. So there are several artists and creators who are also collectors, and vice versa. So you could be making a friend or collaborate with, or just become close with an artist who also, if they see that you have an auction, they will buy one of your works. So it's sort of really similar to the art world. Those components are really kind of set you up to succeed.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I will definitely dive deeper into that as well myself to learn more about that, what you've shared. In terms of setting oneself up above the noise for an artist, because of the many artists that are out there right now. I've read 100,000 artists NFTs you've got on your on Saatchi. Is that correct? Approximately
How many
100
NFTs?
100,000 artists. Is that right? Did I read that right?
Oh, we have, on site wide, we definitely have hundreds of thousands of artists. Yeah.
How do you set yourself above the noise as an artist? Like what type of art is the one that you might say would be most successful with NFTs?
I get this question a fair amount. I've gotten from artists, I'm not sure if my artwork is well suited for NFTs. Like, what do I do? And I do think that right now, there is a perception that many NFTs, in order to be able to sell fine art NFTs, you have to have some kind of collectible or PFP component. And to that I say no. There are I'm really trying to reinforce the idea that an NFT is just a tool, and that if you create fine art, and NFTs are just a tool for that. So there isn't necessarily a type of art. It's more or less who your audience is and which collectors you're trying to appeal to, and which communities you're trying to appeal to. I would also say, and this is something I say to some artists that I actually worked with prior to Saatchi, to quote unquote stay in your lane. So whatever you feel as if your touch is, or your style is, or wherever your skill is, it's okay to continue doing that and refining that. I don't necessarily think it's always the best thing to be the do-it-all artist. And in that way, I do think there is some value in sort of staying like with what you know, and building a network and building off of what you already have kind of established. So I do think that, trad art or traditional artist already has a collector base, and they decide to start to work with or even begin to dabble into NFTs, that it's possible to kind of educate your collectors, and rather than necessarily joining in a community that you're not already a part of, just tapping into your own and using that as a time to educate your collectors about what it is to own an NFT, and how this could actually benefit them too. How artists can let them know that this is actually maybe more valuable to you, as opposed to just buying my digital art, or even necessarily like my physical art. I think that there are definitely ways to gain visibility, just by doing what you have been doing and refining that, and tapping into an existing network and community.
Yeah, that's great advice. Yes, fantastic. Thank you. And there are so many more questions that come up for me. I'm just aware that I'm noticing how time is, running, and I still have so many questions. I would love to still touch on a couple from some of the listeners, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So there were some great questions, and one of them was, how did Saatchi approach this new technology doing the jump into digital art? How did you approach this jump, I would say?
Yeah, so it seemed like a sort of a natural evolution of our mission to support artists in whatever way we can, to expand their practice, to kind of help them maximize their profit. It really was aligned with something a cause we were already invested in. We had our initial drop in January of this year. It was called The Other Avatars, and it essentially comprised of PFPs. I'm realizing the wording that I'm using, you may not quite know what I'm talking about. But they comprised of NFTs, sort of like custom derivative avatars of Vincent van Gogh. And we pulled 150 of some of our most talented artists on Saatchi Art, and we sort of let them their creative imagination just go. And so we realized from doing that project that this was actually very much aligned with not just our mission, but also to allowing artists to be able to explore and dig a little deeper into an area and territory that they've never even considered, but some artists are physical. They never even consider that they would become not only an NFT artist, but involved with any kind of technology with regard to their practice. So that was really how we leaped into it. Of course, it was with a little uncertainty, but the way that we were aligned with what was happening in the space as well, it seemed to kind of make sense. But of course, we learned so much in that process too, kind of even how you would execute something like this. We aren't necessarily technologists either, so having to learn all of that in conjunction with where we're truly experts, which is supporting emerging artists, educating artists, curation, those things that we really know, it was a challenge, but it was really exciting. And I get so many requests and inquiries every day from artists who are just eager to figure out how to start making NFTs. So it has definitely served our community. So in other words, we just kind of dove right in because it made the most sense.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yes. And in terms of the future of NFT, where do you see where do you see that going? How do you see the future of NFTs?
Big question. Well, I don't think it's going anywhere. I would say like any sort of groundbreaking technology, especially one that has a wide variety of uses. I think despite market conditions, despite speculation, even despite bad players, I think the technology and its benefits are undeniable. I tend to kind of draw a parallel between what's happening with NFTs right now with the introduction of the internet and the World Wide Web. Technically, the internet has been around since maybe the late 70s, 80s. It really wasn't in sort of people's homes until the mid 90s, late 90s even, depending on where you lived. And it wasn't until the 2000s that it was, sort of ubiquitous. You couldn't really do any schoolwork or it was becoming more common, even for, like government departments and any kind of official documentation. It was becoming more common in sort of practical ways to have the internet, up until now, obviously, where it's totally ubiquitous and you truly cannot do anything without Wi-Fi. And I sort of think about that evolution and what NFTs will look like, and the blockchain technology, of course, how that will play out over time. The sort of lull that's happening right now. I mean, again, the NFT boom was last year. It's been a year, like almost a year and a half, and it doesn't seem like a true perspective to see what's happening right now is indicative of what will come. So I really don't think it's going away. Similar to the internet, it's in any innovation that has so many benefits to it's bound to stay.
Yeah. No, I think I get that as well from it. And yeah, one final question that I really want to get into, just asking you about the project that you've got going as well. But I'm just curious, obviously, being part of Saatchi Art and with your experience and everything that you're seeing with the development right now with NFTs and the future and everything that you've just shared, what would be your greatest or like most important advice right now for an emerging artist on their journey?
Don't be discouraged. I think creators and artists who are especially last year, we're seeing how there were artists who, as physical artists, they weren't making very much, or they weren't artists at all and decided to get into the NFT space, and they were making a lot of money all of a sudden. They were able to pay their rent with the money that they were making from selling NFTs, or selling their fine art NFTs rather. And there were many more artists and creators who didn't have the same success, and were becoming burnt out. Even the more successful ones are beginning to become burnt out, sort of marketing for themselves, being prolific, feeling like they have to create 5 new artworks in a week, especially if they have a fair amount of demand. And so it's very easy to feel as if, this isn't for you, or that you won't be successful at something because there isn't an immediate drawback, or aren't immediate results. I would also say too that not every project is for you. So, I think some artists believe that if they aren't chosen for residency, or if their NFTs aren't selling, or whatever the case may be, they feel as if it has something to do with the quality of their artwork, when sometimes it's just what the exhibition or drop calls for. So I think that artists should have more of awareness about that it's not because your artwork is, bad or tasteless, or not fine quality. It might not fit either the program or the direction of the exhibition or project. So, like, I really don't want artists to feel discouraged if, curators, or if directors, or whoever, or marketplace doesn't vet you, like it doesn't have anything to do with your artwork, probably half of the time. Don't be
Wow,
discouraged.
thank you. Yes. That's amazing advice. And I'm sure that the artists listening right now, that kind of makes their chest just go, oh, just a little bit more relaxed. Because that's wonderful. Oftentimes that could feel like a rejection, right? But it's not a rejection. It's more like not every project's going to be able to take everybody on, or it might not fit to that particular theme or whatever. So thank you. That's really good. All right, Capucine, tell us a little bit about the project that you've got going right now.
Yeah, so Saatchi's our latest project right now is called Visions of the Future. And it's a NFT photography auction and exhibition. It presents over 55 emerging artists who are essentially showing us how they envision the future to come. It started with an open call for photographers. We had received almost 1,000 entries, and we had this really great panel of jurors who kind of guest curated. We all kind of collaboratively curated and dwindled down almost 1,000 entries to 55. Wow. And it's some really incredible photography that's in this exhibition. The physical exhibition, the IRL exhibition, we actually opened in September. And it was at Saatchi Art's The Other Art Fair, which is an art fair we have every year. We have dozens really around the world every year. And we opened there in the one in LA. It closed at the end of the art fair, but the auction is actually still ongoing. It's up right now on the Artiva app. ARTIVA. It's an application that's powered by Zora for any listeners who are familiar with NFT marketplaces. And yeah, it's just sort of our our baby. It definitely kind of leans into sort of a, I guess, strategy that our program has right now, that really is about merging the physical and digital components of art together. So one component of this exhibition is a phygital. I don't know if you've ever heard this word, but it basically is physical and digital together into one word.
Love
And
that.
we tend to, because it's photography, it's digital
Mm.
photography.
Mm-hmm.
We have with every purchase of an NFT, the collector can redeem or receive 3 limited edition photographs of that NFT.
Mm-hmm.
So we really like to kind of draw, and that's sort of what the exhibition was too. We really like to draw, like the parallel, this traditional art world or traditional art and digital NFT art together. So that
Yeah.
is the project, and we're really excited about it. And you can probably find more details on the Saatchi Art website, but you could definitely find details on
Mm-hmm.
saatchiart.com/NFT.
Yes.
Yeah, some really great works in the show. I'm excited.
Amazing. Yeah, I've had a little peek into it already, and it's super amazing. And all the links are below this podcast episode. It's all lined up there as well, so you can just find it easily. Amazing project. It sounds really, really, really cool. And it must have been so hard to pin it down to 50 from 1,000. Wow, that's amazing as well.
It was very difficult. And that's also an example of how we've come across so many great photographers,
Mm,
but we had to dwindle it down to 55.
yeah,
And so like that project didn't fit for those photographers for whatever the reasons were. Maybe it wasn't on theme, or maybe like truly for many reasons. So
yeah,
yeah, that's an example. If you have to dwindle down from so many entries
mm,
that maybe the project just wasn't for you, and it has nothing to do with your artwork or the
yeah.
quality of your artwork.
Amazing. Yeah, just keep going, and the right thing will come round for you as well. Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Capucine. This has been an absolute pleasure. It's given me 100 more questions as well, following on to dive deeper, but it's been like really, really, really enriching. And I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and sharing all of everything. Yeah, all the wisdom, and yeah, it's just been a pleasure. Thank you.
Oh gosh, I'm not fully an expert. As I said before, Web3 is still so new, NFTs are still so new, and
Mm,
we're all learning
yeah,
something new every single day. But yeah, that's what's so exciting about it. I guess I am more of an expert than most. And
yes,
yeah, I think it's definitely worth, even if you aren't an artist, really, trying to understand the technology and being a little more educated
yeah,
on it for sure.
yeah. I'm definitely going to dive deep into it myself now to educate myself more on this, because obviously this is very much the future, and so
You're
it's been an
welcome to
honor.
email me. You're also welcome to email
Yes.
me questions.
Amazing.
Or DM me on Twitter,
Yes.
which my Twitter, by the way, is at CAPJ
Mm-hmm.
__ ETH.
ETH.
Yeah, ETH, in other words. But
Mm-hmm. Yes.
um, yeah,
Awesome. I've
I
got
would
that.
love to answer any more questions that you have, or even that your listeners might have.
Amazing. Yeah, so that's going to be under the episode as well. And thank you so much for offering that. That's super valuable. Yeah, I'm sure questions will come up for me and yeah, for others as well. Thank you so much for your openness and for sharing. And yeah, that's amazing work you're doing. I can really feel the passion and in what you're doing. And yeah, it's I look forward to staying in touch and to see where all of this is continuing to develop into.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Capucine. In that case, thank you, everybody. And we'll finish here and I'll see you in the next episode.